Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name's Justin. I've been on the channel a couple of times now. Will has been kind enough to invite me to talk about vintage football, and then again, more vintage football, I guess, with my buddy Mike a couple weeks ago. Will asked me after that last interview to kind of put together a short video about my top 5 favorite vintage football sets of all time, which I think I mentioned in at least one video. This is one of my favorite topics in the hobby. So I was very happy to do it and happy to show off some cards and talk about my top 5 favorite vintage football sets. I was going to do a little bit of a kind of honorable mention category prior to getting into my top 5 favorite sets, but as I got going, I realized the honorable mention video would probably be something in and of itself, as I probably have just as much to say about those sets as well. So all that to say, there's a lot of vintage football sets that I love, and this isn't easy, just narrowing it down to 5. I was kind of actually talking with Will a little bit about this earlier, that kind of a preference for sets and stuff is a little bit easier for vintage collectors, just because there was one set a year. Maybe some years there was 2 sets a year. Nowadays we have who knows how many sets a year, and that's fine. I have plenty of modern football cards in my collection too, and like those as well. But when it comes to sets, I have kind of more of a affinity for the vintage stuff, and so that's kind of why I'm just breaking it down in terms of my top 5 favorite vintage sets today. So just kind of to start out, when I first did this, I actually did this on my Instagram, VintageFB52, maybe about a year ago or something, where I went through and did actually a list of my top 10 favorite vintage football sets. In thinking about the sets that I liked, I tried to kind of see if there was a structure to it. Tried to think about, okay, what is it about these sets that makes me pick them as my favorites? So I came up with really kind of 3 ways that I found myself selecting my favorite sets, and 3, kind of big prongs that influence where I rank a set. And in order, the first one is number and quality of Hall of Fame rookies. I myself am a big Hall of Fame rookie collector. My major goal in football collecting is to get a rookie card for every NFL Hall of Famer. I think I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of only having 12 to go, but one of those is a card I'm going to talk about here in a little bit that's a huge one that I don't know if I'll ever quite be able to swing. But nonetheless, Hall of Fame rookies are kind of my number one factor. Who's in the set? How many of them are there? That's my number one factor in determining my favorite set. And in terms of quantity, that's easy. You can go through and see how many Hall of Fame rookies there are in each set. In terms of who's in the set, and I don't mean to be disparaging to anyone who has made the NFL Hall of Fame, just to make the NFL period is a huge accomplishment. To make it to the Hall of Fame is on another level. But there is a difference. One of the sets I'm going to talk a little bit about is 57 Topps here in a few minutes. And in 57 Topps, you have the Hall of Fame rookies of Bart Starr and Johnny Unitas, and also Jack Butler and Tommy McDonald. So, no disrespect to Jack Butler and Tommy McDonald or the people who collect those guys, but obviously in football history and in hobby history, guys like Bart Starr and Johnny Unitas are going to carry a little bit more weight. So in terms of Hall of Fame rookies, it's both number and, which Hall of Fame guys are we talking about here? So that's number 1. Number 2 for me is set design. And, this is one of the things I absolutely love about vintage collecting, is that when you look at a lot of these vintage sets, the cards are absolutely pieces of art. I'm not going to say they're kind of like pieces of art or they're, whatever. They are actually pieces of art, at least to me. That's my perspective. And I think there are some modern sets that look very nice, though I think a large portion of the time now, all of them just kind of gel together a little bit. Can I really tell the difference between 2020 Prism and 2023 Prism? Not really. Not to say that, there's anything wrong with Prism. I own cards from both of those sets, but when you look back at the vintage sets, there's a lot of years where you have very distinct designs, most years actually. And to me, my criteria always for, am I collecting the right way for me, is do I like looking at my collection? And with my vintage stuff, the cards I like looking at the most are from the sets that I think look the best. And We'll get into where design plays a pretty big role in my ordering of things here as we get toward the top of the list. But just to say that that's an important prong for me, next to Hall of Fame rookies, the most important. Now, the third prong is other big cards that are not Hall of Fame rookies. What does that mean? Well, it can be a rookie card of somebody who's not a Hall of Famer, or, cards of Hall of Fame guys where, it's a really nice card, but it's just not their rookie. And I'll give some specific examples of that as I get into my set list. But those are kind of the criteria I use to evaluate my favorite sets. And that's not something I came up with the criteria and then evaluated which sets were my favorite. It was more the other way around. I looked at which sets were my favorite, and from there figured out, okay, here's the things about those sets that I like and why I'm ranking them as I am. So, without further ado, I'll kind of get into it, my top 5 favorite sets, going down from 5 to 1. And I've got some cards off to my right here that I'm going to show the cards from my collection. I've actually limited it to 4 cards per set, so I don't take all day here. Most of the cards that I want to have from these sets, I'm happy to say that I do have. Not always in high grade, to be sure, but I do have them. There's one big one that I'm going to mention that I do not have, that I hope to get someday. And that one actually comes in with my first set I'm going to mention here. My number 5 set of all time for me is the 1935 National Chickle set. And this set was the first nationally distributed football set of all time. There were football cards before that, but no nationally distributed sets. So National Chickle is a big one for us football collectors. And in terms of my criteria, the set itself is just absolutely beautiful. I'm going to show some cards here in a minute, but it is a very well done set. This is a set that I've grown because I started out collecting post-war vintage football, and actually my transition into pre-war vintage football as well was through one particular card in the Chickle set, and I'll mention that in a second. But the more Chickles that I've come to possess, the more I've really, really, really come to appreciate the set. So I ranked that one at number 5. It has 6 Hall of Fame rookies, and the biggest card in that set is kind of the card that I do not possess, and it is the Bronco Nagurski rookie card, and that is a short print from that set, and it is tough. It is a tough card to possess. It is probably, I would argue, the biggest card in the vintage football hobby. It might not be the most recognizable. That might be the 58 Topps Jim Brown or maybe the 65 Namath. But in terms of, if you ask football collectors, if you ask vintage football collectors, what is the one card you want to own? That's going to be at the top of an awful lot of people's lists. I know it's at the top of mine. Why don't I own it? Because a 1 is going to cost you probably at least about 10 grand, maybe a little less if you get a deal or one that's in really rough shape. But I do not own that card. That's the biggest headliner in the set. Other Hall of Fame rookies in the set include my favorite card in the set, that I own anyway, and that is the Dutch Clark rookie right there. See if I can get a nice view of it. Dutch Clark is one of my Lions guys. I've got that one in an SGC 3. And that is a card that I actually got me into pre-war vintage football collecting. And I wasn't planning on getting into it. I saw a deal on this one last November and jumped on it. And ever since then, I've been, reorienting my goal to not just post-war Hall of Fame rookies, but Hall of Fame rookies generally. So the Dutch Clark is my favorite card in the set that I own. A couple other really cool ones that I like. Ken Strong have this one in a PSA 5 with an MC designator, though. That doesn't bother me because you can't. I know it's not showing up great on my camera here, but the color on this one does really pop. And, obviously you can see how it's miscut, but the corners are fairly sharp and the color is good, and I absolutely love the card, so I am more than happy with it. Another one that I love from that set that I just got all of the Clark is the only one I got last year. The rest of these I've just got this year. And I know this one's a little bit rough in a 1, but that's the Clark Hinkle rookie card. And another classic card. He was, I believe, in the 2nd Pro Football Hall of Fame class ever inducted. I think Strong and Clark were in the 1st. But that's another great looking card. That's a tough one to get because it's a Packers card, and the Packers have a huge collector base. Another one, and this is probably the best looking Chickle card I have, and this is the Cliff Battles Hall of Fame rookie. Color on this one is excellent. There's a little bit of staining on it, and that causes the grade to go down a bit, but I'm very happy with my copy of that. Other cards in that set, those are the Hall of Fame rookies. Aside from the Nagurski, I do have all of them. The other one I have somewhere but didn't bring up here is the Turk Edwards. But besides that, there's some other kind of cool short prints in the set. Bull Tosi is one. He's not a Hall of Famer, but his short print rookie card is another pretty popular card in the set. So the set doesn't necessarily have a ton of Hall of Fame rookies, but the ones it has are pretty darn cool. It has the biggest card, I would argue, in the football hobby, and it's a great set design, so it's got to be on the list somewhere. My number 4 set is the iconic 1957 top set. This is my only top set on the list. There's a lot of really good top sets that would have made my honorable mentions that make my top 10, but the 57 is my favorite top set of all time. It's a great design, as I'm going to show in a minute. Really big Hall of Fame rookies at the top. You have Johnny Unitas, Bart Starr, Night Train Lane, Paul Hornung, and Raymond Berry. Those are absolutely huge, legendary names. So in terms of all these sets, if you're looking for a better top 5, first 5 Hall of Fame rookies, I don't know if you're going to find them. That's a pretty powerful list. The thing that brings 57 tops down a bit is beyond those 5 cards, you only have 2 other Hall of Fame rookies, and that's Jack Butler and Tommy McDonald. Again, not huge names, perfectly great players, but not huge names. But then also beyond that, there's just not a whole lot of cards in there where you'd say, okay, that's an iconic non-Hall of Fame rookie card. So, it's a great set at the top. It's got a great design, but just kind of lacks depth, both in terms of Hall of Fame rookies and other big cards. But let me show what I'm talking about here with some of these guys. This is my favorite card in the set and one of my absolute favorite cards in my collection. That's the Johnny Unitas rookie. Have that one in an SGC 4. Traded up for that last year. I've owned, I think, 4 different iterations of this card at this point, and this is the one I want to stick with. I absolutely love that card. That's my favorite card in the set. A lot of people would make an argument for this guy, though, Bart Starr. And the reason, Johnny Unitas certainly, I think, is probably a better player historically. But Bart Starr was iconic, played for the Packers, won the first Super Bowl as their quarterback. And also the Unitas is actually a double print in the set. This Starr is a short print. So it's a bit more rare, which I think adds to the appeal of it for some people. And you can kind of see, I'll just show the design here. You see you have a portrait and an action shot in this 57 tops design, which I personally really like. And that's something it definitely has going for it. This is one of my favorites in the set. Night Train Lane, another one of my Lions guys. Absolutely have this one in a PSA 4. I talked about his story a bit on the last interview I did with Will, but absolutely one of my favorite guys in the set. Great defensive player for the Detroit Lions and Chicago Cardinals as well. And one you got to have up there, Paul Hornung, rookie. He's an NFL Hall of Famer, but probably more famous as a college football player and Heisman winner for Notre Dame. And that's another, I think, very important card from that set to have. So that's my number 4. And again, great set. All of these are great sets. It's just a matter of slight differences that put one above the other. Number 3, and this is one where, I love the design, very iconic, and that's Bowman, 1952 Bowman Large. And the 52 Bowman Large set has 15 Hall of Fame rookies in it, so there is a lot of depth. There's also some pretty good punch at the top, not as much as I would say 57 tops or probably the 2 sets that I put above 52 Bowman Large in terms of big names at the top. But Frank Gifford, that one's huge. I mean, because he was a great player, but also, for people my age that watch Monday Night Football and probably a little bit older and a little bit younger, we watch Frank Gifford every Monday night as the commentator for Monday Night Football, so he's kind of stuck in our consciousness that way too. You have the rookie card of George Halas, which I think is an absolutely fantastic card. One of the great coaches in NFL history for Chicago Bears, and I'll show that one in a minute. It's a beautiful card. Also, too, some really good short prints, like the 52 Bowman Large rookie Ollie Matson is in that. That's a good short print. And in terms of big cards that aren't Hall of Fame rookies, I think 52 Bowman probably has one of the biggest non-Hall of Fame rookie cards in the vintage football hobby, and that's the Jim Lansford rookie. I don't own that one. Personally, it's not a card I'm that interested in, but it's a card that is certainly known in the vintage football hobby. And the reason is it was the last card in the set, so it was always prone to, not being easy to find in good condition. And it was also a short print. So bottom line is there are very few Jim Lansford rookie cards from 52 Bowman Large that exist in really good condition. So that's made it something of an iconic card in the hobby, which even though it's not a card I'm particularly interested in, if I'm evaluating sets based on my criteria, that's certainly an important card to mention. But some of the cards that I have that I like from that set, some of my favorite Hall of Fame rookies. Here's the Ollie Matson short print Bowman Large rookie. That's one of my favorites in the set. That and the Frank Gifford, which I'm going to show in a second, are probably my top 2 favorite cards. There's my Gifford. That's a really nice looking 2. There's a crease in the back that if you kind of hold it up to the sunlight just right, you can see it. But if you don't do that, this thing looks like it's probably a 4, 4.5, to be honest. The Hallis right here. That is, obviously my copy's a bit off center, and that's why it gets the 2. But the color on that is just great, and that's one of my favorite things about that card is the colors just really pop. You got, the Bear logo here at the bottom that I think looks really cool. So, and I'm not a Bears fan by any means. I'm a Lions fan. I've, got the Lions hat on, but, I still appreciate the design of that card. It's great. And another one that I really like is the Gino Marchetti rookie, defensive tackle for the Dallas Texans. And he was a force, and I think that's just a really cool looking card and another great one from the set. And one you can pick up pretty reasonably, by the way. That one's probably one of the better values in the set. All right, so on to the top 2, and this one is really close, and this is where I said design was going to kind of factor in a bit. So my number 2 set is 48 Leaf. And 48 Leaf is just a monster football set. This is, we had 35 National Chickle, and then we had to wait till 1948 to get another nationally distributed football set. And there were 2 sets that year, Leaf and Bowman. Now, I like both sets a lot, but the Leaf is definitely, to me, the bigger set. I like the colorful cards. The 48 Bowmans were black and white. And there are just some very, very, very iconic cards if you look through the checklist in there, and I'm going to show several of them here in a moment. But yeah, 48 Leaf is a set with, again, like 52 Bowman, 15 Hall of Fame rookies, and some of the names at the top of this list: Sammy Baugh, Sid Luckman, Bobby Lane, Doak Walker, Chuck Bednarik. I mean, there are some heavy hitters at the top of that list. And even as you kind of work your way down, I'm going to talk about the Leo Nomalini card in a minute. I mean, there are some very, very, very iconic Hall of Fame rookies in that set. And also non-Hall of Fame rookie guys. One that stands out is the, 48 Leaf Kenny Washington. Kenny Washington was one of the 4 players who reintegrated pro football post-war, and he was actually the first African-American player to sign a professional football contract post-war. Actually played football in college at UCLA, oddly enough, with the guy you guys are probably familiar with, Jackie Robinson. So Kenny Washington's got a really cool story. He has a card in both the Bowman and Leaf set. But yeah, his card being in that Leaf set is definitely one that I would highlight as very iconic and desirable to collect. The only reason 48 Leaf is not number 1 is the design is fine. I don't dislike it, but I don't think it's up there with some of the other designs, particularly from the Bowman cards of the 1950s and even some of the top sets. I don't like the 48 Leaf design as well as I like, say, 57 tops or even really 55 tops All-American or even, 65 tops. It's a fine design, but if I were just ranking cards based on looks, 48 Leaf would probably, it would be toward the end of my top 10, if not kind of 11 or 12. So design is really the only reason 48 Leaf's not number 1, because by all other criteria, it is an absolutely amazing set. And I'll show some of the cards here. And by the way, some people love the design of 48 Leaf. This is just a personal opinion. Again, I don't dislike it, but it's not up there with some of the other sets on this list or even other sets I'd put in my honorable mentions. But boy, there's some big cards in this set. Probably the biggest is the 48 Leaf Sammy Baugh rookie. He's got a card in Bowman too, but I think his Leaf is the card to have. I think most collectors would agree with that. Nothing wrong with the Bowman card, but this is definitely the one that I would say is the big one to have. Now, the next couple I'm going to show, Chuck Bednarik being the first 48 Leaf Bednarik, and this is one of the few cards that I'm happy to have and don't try to upgrade at least actively, even though it got kind of the authentic minimum size not met grade on it. And the reason for that is the Bednarik is a short print in that set. His rookie card in that set is a short print, and it is tough. The pop report on that, I don't know exactly what it is, but it is not high. So getting this card, and mine actually, it was miscut in the factory, obviously, and that's why it got the authentic minimum size not met designation. But it looks pretty darn good for a copy of that card. It looks a lot better than a lot of the ones that I've seen over time that are probably a bit more beat up. And that is not a cheap card because it's a short print and, the scarcity is there. And for Hall of Fame collectors, it's one that we need. So that is a card from that set that, to me, it's right there with the Sammy Baugh for biggest card in the set. The Baugh is probably the more notable, the one people try to get. But man, the Bednarik's, and Bednarik was a legend too. I mean, one of the great defensive players in NFL history. And on the topic of short prints from the set of Hall of Fame rookies, we also have the Leo Nomellini. Again, I have this in a 1, and I am fine with that. I'm just happy to have it because, anybody out there who's a vintage football collector knows that getting your hands on any copy of that 48-leaf Bednarik or that 48-leaf Nomellini, it's not easy. It is absolutely not easy, and any copy is going to cost you in high grade or mid grade even. I mean, those are going to run you, well into the thousands. So tough cards, but really cool cards to have, I think, for us Hall of Fame collectors. And another one, I got to give a props to one of my Lions guys here, the Blonde Bomber, Bobby Lane. The color on this one, this is probably one of my 48 leaf cards where I think it has probably some of the best color. Bobby Lane was probably the last truly great quarterback my Lions had, which a little bit sad though. Goff's getting there for us, but that was a long time ago. And but that's a great card, especially being a Lions fan. I got to put the Lane out there on my list. So my favorite set of all time, number 1, is 1950 Bowman, and 1950 Bowman is that and 51 Bowman, which would be probably my 6th favorite set if I were to make the list going down beyond 5. 50 and 51 Bowman, I think, are the 2 most beautifully designed card sets of all time. So I love the design of 50 Bowman. There are some really big Hall of Fame rookies in that set. Autogram, which is the card that carries the set, no doubt. But then Y.A. Tittle, Marion Motley, Elroy, Crazy Legs Hirsch, Joe Perry, Lou Groza. I mean, there are some really, really well-known, notable Hall of Fame rookies in that set. I think that there are 9 Hall of Fame rookies total in that set, but they're very, for the most part, a lot of very well-known Hall of Famers, and the cards are just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And to that end too, I mean, if you think about, in the hobby, okay, what guys like Sammy Baugh, Bobby Lane, Doak Walker, some of these, iconic guys of the time, what is their most noteworthy card? The guys who are kind of in that 48 leaf set where their rookies are, what is their most notable card outside of that? For a lot of these guys, it's going to be the 50 Bowman. I particularly would say, without doubt, the Sammy Baugh 1950 Bowman card is probably his best looking card. I don't think it's his most desirable because he does have the 48 leaf rookie, but it is a great looking card, and it's one that's sought after by football collectors, vintage football collectors. And I think the same is true of Doak Walker and Bobby Lane, that 50 Bowman set has a lot of guys where you have iconic cards of them that aren't necessarily their rookies, and that boosts the setup for me as well. So 50 Bowman checks all the boxes. Great Hall of Fame rookies, amazing design, and some other really iconic cards too. So I'll show a few of my favorites from there, my Hall of Fame rookies, starting with this guy, Autogram. Got that one in a SGC 3.5. Absolutely love that card. I think that's a very, very, very nice looking card, and one that I was really excited to get when I got it in my collection a couple years ago. Another one, Marion Motley, and I think this is a very underrated card in general. His rookie card from this 50 Bowman set. I mentioned a minute ago Kenny Washington being the first African American to sign an professional football contract post-war. Marion Motley was one of the other guys who came in right around the same time, sort of those 4 guys that were, reintegrating the NFL in 1946. And Marion Motley is the only one of those guys who has a Hall of Fame rookie card, and it's one that I really enjoy having. And there's a crease on this thing, but I'm happy with my copy that I have as a 2. Y.A. Tittle, this to me is probably the best looking football card ever made. I just think the sky contrasted with his jersey and his pose, it's just an amazing looking card. And Y.A. Tittle had a long career. He was known for his toughness and grit, and just kind of an interesting story there if you want to take some time to look him up. And one more that I'd show is the Elroy Crazy Legs Hirsch rookie. This is one that I think too, he's a top 100 player of all time, and just a great looking, really cool card. All right, so that's my rundown. Those are my top 5 vintage football sets of all time. Again, 35 National Chico, 57 Topps, 52 Bowman Large, 48 Leaf and 50 Bowman. Interested in other collectors' opinions. Obviously, this isn't a right or wrong answer type of question, but that's my opinion on it. Love talking about this, so if anybody's got thoughts, obviously reach out or drop them in the comments, and appreciate you guys letting me come on and talk about this. Thanks.